Welcome to this episode of the show. Today, I am just beyond excited to introduce to you a very special human being, Amy Rogerson. She's many, many things, but how I see Amy is this fierce, bold, embodied woman who is here to illuminate a path of integrity and following truth, not only for herself, but for everyone she comes across. Her work is deeply about serving mother, biological mother, but also the archetypal energy. And I can't believe I've not met you in real life yet, Amy, because there's just this affinity and connection that I have with Amy, and there's just so much that I'm grateful for, because even though our work sort of has crossovers, there's also like a experience that I have that I've been able to work with Amy in her groups with mothers, biological mothers, and it's palpable. She's like this, she's the real deal. And it's totally inspiring to have you on the show, but also just to know you, Amy. And I'm just really grateful you're making the time to have. This is our first official conversation, by the way. We're just hitting record on this. So it's really cool. It's really cool to have you on the show. I feel very at ease and trusting of where this conversation is going to go. So thank you for being here.
Me too. I also feel that ease and trust.
Yeah.
It's my first podcast interview ever. So yeah. But I'm just gonna pretend this is just a conversation.
Yeah, it
without
is.
the picture. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Oh.
It's amazing to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's interesting how there's a few people that I have like parallel journeys with that I've not like met in person. And you're one of them. There's maybe like 3 or 4 over the past, I would say, maybe 5 or 6 years, where like in the online world, which I mean, we have to admit it's like a world, right? We live there. We can't pretend that that world doesn't exist. I tried that. It doesn't really work, especially if you work online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where I've just developed these really deep, beautiful friendships. And at first I was like, this is weird. Like, surely this can't be like real and true. And it's like, no, it's real and true. Yeah, one of them comes to my mother nurture and like ended up doing Rochelle's training after me. And yeah, another one's also a teacher. And yeah, as you say, there's these crossovers. Yeah, but it's there's a collective like feeling of yeah, just being seen and understood, yeah, despite coming from like different vantage points. Yeah, that's what I love about it.
Me too.
So thank you
Oh my gosh,
for
you're so
having me.
welcome. So welcome. I don't want anyone to assume what you do. So would you like to just tell us a little bit about what you're doing, where you're at, anything else that wants to come through?
Cool. Yeah, that feels quite apt timing, because this week I'm working on my website, which is something I've been like, I don't know, wanting to do, putting off, particularly around what I'm doing now. I always had a website, but if you work for yourself and yeah, or and run your own business, you know, those things can expire, especially in like, you know, the type of work I feel like I do, which is identity shifting all the time, because my work is so much an expression of who I am, and I'm growing and shifting all the time, and I would hope that I am. And I kept looking on my old website being like, this is not me anymore. Who is this person? And not in a judgy way, but like, yeah, sometimes just feeling like, yeah. And I've got so much mixed feelings around marketing, you know, myself, and just because I was in marketing. So yeah, it's been quite a journey for me. Yeah, I left advertising, gosh, a long time ago now. And then I freelanced for a while whilst I pursued what was true for me at the time, which was the path of yoga. And I was going through a very personal healing journey. And yeah, it feels important to mention like the pregnancy losses that I had over a number of years, which were kind of intersecting with that, leaving advertising, starting yoga, and really starting to understand what was going on in my body. Yeah, it's very, it's amazing to reflect on it, because it's very much like why I am here today, why I'm doing this work, like speaking of like embodiment and mother, like that's essentially where it began. And my experience of the experience of death happening through and in my body through pregnancy and loss was like a total portal for me of transformation and healing. And it started on a very physical level. I think the spiritual and mental and emotional stuff was happening at the same time, even though I may not have been entirely aware of it. But there was stuff going on with my body hormonally, and I was like very much determined to like heal. And yeah, what I know to be true now that I have perspective, is that journey doesn't end, and like I don't just like heal. But in terms of the losses, I was able to go through them, and then eventually carry a pregnancy to full term, which is my eldest son, Benji, which is just over 3 years ago now. But the pregnancy loss experience for me and my journey with yoga that set me off on a path to study counseling and holistic therapy, just to kind of feel and be credible to do pregnancy loss work with women. Because what I noticed when I had those experiences was just like the loneliness and the lack of information. And my first loss was very much, they were both actually, two of them were very medical, and one of them wasn't. And it was, now that I have all the information I have now as a mother, as somebody who works in postpartum care, who works with mothers' bodies, if I had known then what I know now, I would have treated it very different. But of course, we have to go through those things. For me, in that case, I had to go through that to really understand like how to really hold space for a mother's body and her spirit and her being when she experiences loss. So I started running circles in London, pregnancy loss circles, and I was doing a little bit of one-on-one work, and I was yoga teaching, and I was doing freelance copywriting and strategy stuff. So it was a lot of juggling, a lot of things. And I knew eventually the time was going to come when it was going to just start, narrowing. But it took a while. It's also really alive for me right now, because I think for the first time, I only really properly stopped doing freelance copywriting work last year. Wow. So now all my time, I say all my time, I have 2 small kids, but the time that I use for like my creative processing and work, so to speak, is now fully devoted to mother care and working one-on-one with women. And this time I'm at now creating the website is around really defining what that is. And I would say everything that I hold space for, I'd say 90% of the things I hold space for and teach and hold in a field with a client is something that I've been through most of the time. And it may not be literally the same thing, but the energetics of major transitions, death and rebirth, and also just witnessing play a huge part of it, because it covers the entire birth continuum, like from consciously concepting a baby to falling pregnant, what happens in pregnancy. You already start to that transformation that happens in the body is essentially starting to break the maiden down, right? So like you're no longer in control of your body, like your boobs are sore. For me, I profusely vomited through all my pregnancies, even the ones I lost for like months on end. It was absolute hell. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And that was like, just this continuous, this pull into the descent of the initiation into mother. And like, I can really see that now, but at the time I'm like, I want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to be going through this. Please, no. And yeah, the preparation, that preparing for what's to come later in pregnancy, what's to come in birth, and what's to come in postpartum, they're all connected. And they all require, a woman, a mother, requires in all those stages of transformation, spaces where she is seen for who she truly is, and spaces where her truth of who she is reflected back to her by someone else. And that is why community is like a lifeline for a mother and a woman going through that transformation, even though many women may not be aware of it.
Yeah.
They may not be in touch with that, or there's no desire. But the women I work with, even if there's like the slightest desire, and they start to follow that pull, then the rite of passage will kind of naturally unfold. So yeah, it's that witnessing, it's and doing so, holding myself and who I'm working with accountable to like guiding principles for me. One of those is truth. So continually following the thread of truth, mine and theirs. And yeah, the group work that I do now, which I started about a year ago, Mother Nurture, which you've attended, that was kind of born from for me, a need where I needed actual spaces for me to be seen and to see other mothers, and I couldn't see it anyway. Like, it didn't exist in real life. Maybe variations of it existed online, but they weren't at the times that I wanted it. It just didn't suit me. So it didn't exist. I created it. So those are the two things. It's Mother Nurture, and that's like, I don't even know how to describe Mother Nurture. It's like an energy of its own. It really has become, it's now a membership, and women, we meet 3 times a month. Yeah. And the calls cover various different themes, but it's essentially grounded in like the principles that I spoke to, like truth and love and empowerment. Yeah.
I mean, they're all key threads to the value of integrity, and that's what I really feel with you. It's like there's so much integrity in your body, and you can just feel this when you go over to your Instagram, like the way in which you share your process and all of these parts are moving together. Like, it's humanity. It's like this concept, even the way you described your experience of pregnancy and the vomit, it's like this constant like shedding. And it's hard. Like, I just want people to understand like that, because you and I in different ways speak about what that process is, and on the other side, but it doesn't change the fact that it's fucking uncomfortable and really hard and unpleasant, and the amount of times you want to eject out of it is there. But I just want to bring it back and reflect to you that integrity that you have, and I think that's what makes people feel comfortable with you, like they can really trust you to be there with them, and it's not like that you have the answers to whip out and like give them information. It's just truly like your power puts people back into their power, and it's just this beautiful thing to truly witness. And I'm really grateful for the times I've been able to witness that in Mother Nurture, because it's phenomenal.
Thank you. It's been amazing to have you. Yeah, really has been. We've had like a few like non-biological mothers join, and every time it happens, I feel like you led the way as well, because I think you asked me, and then I was like, and then I just opened it up, right? And then a few women ended up joining, and I just find it so, gosh, it really moves me, because I feel like that's such a piece that's missing in our culture. It was missing in me, like when I was a maiden, so to speak. Not entirely, because I do remember, even I think specifically when I moved to London and I was going through such intense personal transformation, one of my closest friends had a baby, and like I traveled over to see her, and there was always an undercurrent of reverence for all my friends who had kids early on, But in terms of like the practical support, the physiology of what a mother needs when she has children, and like just the magnitude of it, I think I wasn't in touch with, because I hadn't experienced it yet. I think that's an interesting piece to speak to, because do we need to go through something to truly empathize and hold space for people? And I don't think we do. Like,
No.
and I think the archetypal like work is actually quite an interesting framework or to put on that as an example of why you don't have to go through it.
Well,
right?
It's exactly that. I think a lot of the empathy that we can have for the human experience, even outside of the context of motherhood, is if you're able to touch the depth of your experience and be comfortable there, you can be with other people in theirs. But with the archetypal framework, for me, this is why it's so important, and we can't rely on waiting to birth children to do this work, because you're aging and maturing, and I'd like to hope that that's happening on the psycho-spiritual level, not just the physical plane of the body. So yeah, it's really important. And I think when we first started talking about doing the podcast, like the word that you used was intersection, and I think if we wind it back a little bit for people, so that we can discuss what these archetypes are and how we see them, because like so much of the relationships with other women, it has been really important for me to understand these things. And I have some friends who haven't done the archetypal work and had the biological experience, and the way in which we interact is very different, and also sometimes conducive and other times not. And it's been a real, from my personal experience, a really painful part of my relationships with women as we move through these transitions, or, not physically doing that. And it's really hard because, like you said, just because a woman hasn't birthed a baby doesn't mean she can't be there for you if you have.
Totally. So, and they are, the majority of mothers probably haven't been through that, the embodiment of that initiation into mother, don't understand it. And it's not to their fault at all. No. It's just that the implications of the culture that we live in. And it's kind of like a degradation that's happened over time. So absolutely not. And even if you just look at midwifery as a practice, or like doulas, when I was doing my pregnancy yoga training, I was actually pregnant. And it was amazing because I was in the experience of what a student would feel like. And I don't even teach pregnancy yoga. Like I could include it in some of my containers if I wanted, but the need has never really arisen. But it served me. Who knows if I hadn't done it? Like it served me in so many incredible ways. But the point being, most of those people were not pregnant. Most of those people were maybe never going to be pregnant. It doesn't mean they didn't have the capacity to teach from that place. And my postpartum doula with Frankie, he was born last year. She has a daughter who's adopted, but she's not been through like the physiological experience of giving birth. And how this woman held space for me in postpartum and in pregnancy, I don't even, So, and these are just like anecdotal examples. I'm sure there are so many. But the rite of passage piece that's missed, Rochelle, my teacher, speaks to it a lot in her work, because that's what she sees is just this huge gap in maturation, and why women become mothers and then end up feeling completely incapable and like behaving exactly like their children. Like it essentially, if you're not working with the depths of what is arising, it's just trigger. And not to say that the triggers won't happen, but to be working consciously and not in a like, not in some kind of militant way. It's I would say the invitation is, and you can reflect back to me the experience with the archetypal work is to do that with like compassion and love. It's really, really, really hard, because the
Really.
default is to just go into like shame, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm blessed to have had this experience of archetypal work and then sharing that with my own mother. So that was, that was something really profound, because what happened was, because she didn't get to have that rites of passage experience, and the patterns and the things that we always conflicted over and like really conflicted over, was because there was a maiden in her that she didn't get to hold and love and nurture by her own mother. She didn't know even that existed in herself. And then she saw those patterns playing out within her life and her children, and like to be able to say, oh wow, this is where it comes from. Okay, I can be with that part, I can see that part, you know, in myself as a woman, but also with her, was like the most profound thing, because these patterns are always there. And I know that you speak to this too, Amy, is like your maiden's like part of you, and like it's something that is constantly moving. And I hope to God that even when I'm in crone, there's these three women inside of me,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that there's this misconception too of like not valuing the maiden at all. And we always see in our culture is her toxic traits and how unintegrated she is and all of these patterns. But I'm like, it needs to be seated in compassion, which is what you said before. And like when you can hold that and know that it's beautiful and it's human and there's wisdom in it too, because there is wisdom there's medicine in there. And if you're able to create this space and this relationship, because it's a relationship ongoing, you don't want and done this stuff, like it's not that you know, it changes things. And it's not always needing to like be in the process of like the archetypes, but when you have it as a lens, it's really valuable. And I find because it just, the feminine just is such an incredible force, and the archetypes give her a language in a different way. And it's just really resonated with me, and it's helped me identify patterns and behaviors. And because it's in the feminine lens, it just allows me to bring that softness and love and be held even by the energy too, sometimes when I can't hold it myself. So yeah.
I really feel that too around it can be difficult, perhaps like it's a collective conditioning, but it can be difficult to look at things loosely, you know, as this fluid, like we're not just like maiden and then mother and then crone. And I feel like I've really been leaning on my maiden recently, like just coming out of really deep personal descent of like physical illness and like emotional illness, and just going through like the latest eclipse and just a lot of deep stuff coming up for me as I've come out of it, and just like this playfulness, and also reflecting on like the amount of work I was doing like before I became a mother. And like also I was like confident and not, I don't know, maybe I have my own internal judgment around like confidence being bad, but actually no, it's not. I've been tapping into that confidence now because I need it as I'm building the website, as I'm placing value in what I believe to be valuable, and like, you know, practicing what I teach in that regard. But yeah, that confidence, that determination, that like energy, that playfulness, and I've really been leaning on her the last few days. And I feel to share, like on the weekend, Bradley and I feel like we were both kind of coming out of something. I had an amazing Mother Nurture call, and my teacher joined us, Rochelle, which was so powerful for me. And then on the Sunday, we had like a mom, dad, and kid meetup with this, like just this mom I'm part of in my area. And together, like, or as a family, feels like we've been through like a suffering tunnel, like just like suffering and like complaining a lot. And not to say that that's bad, because you're really in it, it's like everything's shit, you know. Bradley looked at me that morning before we were about to leave, and he was like, you know what? He's like, I'm going to go to this party and I'm going to tell everyone that we are doing great. He was like, they asked me how I am, and we were like, you know what? It's amazing. Life's amazing. I feel amazing. And I was like, literally thinking the same thing. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to this thing, and I'm like, I'm great, because it was almost like this. I don't know. It was almost like this like mini awakening we had, that like we were just getting a little bit bored of our own suffering and going back to like mindfulness 101 or like positivity. Like, literally it actually really worked. We had the most amazing time. I was like, and usually when I go to these things, I'm like, I'm cool. I'm not like complaining all the time, but I'm like, yeah, it's really hard, and like Frankie's not sleeping, and it can really get like that. It really can. And it's yeah, it's not to say that that's bad either, because I feel like we need to go there. But that energy for me has a bit of maiden quality, because it's a bit, you know what? Fuck this. Everything's like fine. I'm not gonna. It's just using like it's using the practice of awareness and where to place my attention. Like, actually, what can I just, where can I place my attention now? Like, we're well, like some of us are still a little bit sick, but essentially like we're feeling okay. We don't need to like pull ourselves down into this. Yeah, so it's such a balance.
Yeah. Well, what I hear when you say that is like the way that mother can channel the energy. So it's like, I could feel like in the way you're telling us, like, we're going to put the attention here and we're going to call on this part, and we're going to have a fucking good time. We're going to have a great time. And not feel shit about it, because like, you're right. Like I see it all the time. And even sometimes in rites of passage work where we're like, yeah, we need to leave this part of us behind, and all the drama and the overconfidence that comes with the maiden. But like, her confidence and all of her messiness and mistakes is just what creates this beautiful, rich wisdom soup that we get to call on later on. And you know, her confidence and brightness is it's not something to shame or put down, because it allows us to begin new things, allows us to be bold, like with your website. Like, it just gives us the boost of energy that we need. And like, I always think about how she's so connected to the spring, and it's just like all of a sudden nothing, then boom, and it's like everything just opens up. It's a very vulnerable time, but in that is her power. And like, it makes me really sad when I see some of my younger clients come in and they think their goal is to be mother. I'm like, no, it's to be fully maiden. It's to be fully that. Live your life, make mistakes, be yourself, figure out who that is, you know, figure out who that is. And so when you come towards the time that
you'll feel her.
You'll feel her. And then you won't have to mourn the things that you didn't get to do because you're too busy trying to grow up and be mature, you know? And it's just something that I've noticed too, because it's great that younger women are being drawn to this too. And I do see that as a beautiful thing that's happening, because then they step more consciously into biological mother if they want to do that. Like, I'm just like, wow, look at these young women. I'm like, absolute salute to you. But don't forget to like live your life too. Like, don't forget, because if you don't, you mourn it later. And like really can go into like regret spirals and like, wish I had done this and now I can't and it's too late. And like, it can get really heavy and swampy and dark in that place too. And I've also seen women on the other side of that have experienced that, and they're doing this work and going back to repair and love themselves in the places that they didn't feel like they fully could be.
We also can't extract the lesson like before it's ready to be extracted, right? Because you can do all this work and prepare, and that's great and everything, and then also if there is a process of going through the physiology of becoming a mother, then you know you're going to be brought to your knees in other ways as well. You can never fully be prepared or
No.
fully complete, fully integrated ever. I mean, I can think of so many examples of that. For me personally, like when I did my postpartum care training and then started doing my case studies to certify and was like working with women, and then I fell pregnant with Frankie, and my pregnancy with Frank was like such intense preparation for my postpartum from a practical perspective. And then the initiative nature of pregnancy played its course as well. I lost all my hair, most of my hair during that pregnancy. Like, it was a very beautifully deep and initiative experience of pregnancy before birth and postpartum. But the practical preparation and all of that, it was necessary, and it was an important foundation to have that care, like in terms of nutrition, community, social nervous system support, body work, doulas, all of that. But nothing prepared me for how Frankie was going to be, or how Benji was going to react, and the grief, the enormous grief that I felt around like losing my eldest child. It was just so confusing. I was like, but I'm supposed to be like happy, and I was, but it's not synonymous with not feel anything else, right? When you're feeling happy. And it was very confusing and totally destabilizing for me. But when I reflect back, I'm able to see that without the container of that support, I wouldn't have actually been able to go into that experience of grieving, or coming into contact with the truth of what I was actually feeling, which was like, wow, Benji's no longer my only child. It's just part of the initiation into a mother of two. It's a whole different thing to just becoming a mother of one. And then something else I wanted to speak to that came up when you were talking is this feeling. I remember when Benji was born, and it was just I just felt like I belonged. I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like, and I felt so capable, and so just felt like I knew what I was doing. And obviously there's aspects that were challenging, and but as a whole, I was like, wow. But at the same time, I realized, I was like, wow, I've got to do all this work over again. Like, I felt like I was like right at the beginning again. Like, I'd just done so much like work leading up to this point, like personal work. And there's something about that place, and I even feel it now, because having another child just put me back in that place where I'm like, I know nothing, and I've got to start all over again. Is it can tend to make, for me, feel quite small, and like I need to hide because I know nothing, and this place is terrifying. And in those moments, the energy of the maiden really serves, because the tendency, or the reality is that, like, biological mother, archetypal mother, she is the source. To say that she's the source, like she's the source of all, to say that we are going to fully integrate her, whether that's biologically or in an archetypal sense, is unrealistic. It's like, it's a continuous, and I think when I realized that, or as I continuously realized that, it's actually quite comforting, because and Mother Nurture is such a space where I feel like I can really just drop into that, where we can just be like, not perfect and not getting it all right. And I mean in terms of the very kind of new age crunchy mom era that we find ourselves in, that it's like trying to do all the right things, like, and sometimes ideology can really get in the way in those regards. It really can.
I hear that this is also where the possibility of having the understanding of the archetypes and the good girl patterning and all of that stuff is really valuable, because if you can see what's happening on that level, it gives you a sense of a bit of more spaciousness, like, oh, this thing is alive again in a different way, in a different form. Can I take the pressure off? I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be good. For whom am I being good? Am I in relationship with truth? like with what is really needed in this time. Like I can't imagine how confronting it is. I truly can't. And I was saying to you before we hit record, how anyone who says motherhood isn't a spiritual practice, I'm like, I just don't understand how how they say that. I don't understand how they say it. You're constantly dying all of the time to like be in service to like what is needed in that moment.
Yeah, I don't understand either. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a handful. There's a part of me that wonders, am I just seeing what a mask that somebody puts out? And are they really just going through so much stuff in the background and not acknowledging it, or it's showing itself in ways that I can't see? Or but yeah, I often feel like I'm engaging with mothers where I'm like, are you feeling this? And they're like looking at me like I'm crazy, you know. So, but I don't know. That could be a projection. I don't know. But I think what I know for sure is that, yeah, a lot of mothers aren't actually going into the depths. And I think our culture really supports that. Our culture keeps us up right above like water. Like this, the underworld like is not an acceptable place to go, right? So yeah, in terms of like the culture of motherhood now is around like separating mothers from their babies in the process of birth, and then even after birth, like we can go into the depths of like feminism, which is like, you know, women can do what men can do and go back to work, and which is like really empowering, and you know, it has its whole like part in history, but can also really damaging. And goes against the design of the hormonal matrix and needs of a mother and her child, you know. And I'm pretty sure we can track a lot of the collective trauma we see today just everywhere, everyone.
Yeah.
Like those early childhood years when our parents had no resources, didn't know what they were doing, and yeah, just being forced to keep up with the rat race, you know. It's like, it's capitalism, essentially. It's not necessarily feminism, but that's a whole can of worms.
I mean, I'd love to open them. I love to open them because, like, yeah, this false sense of what empowerment is through the lens of current culture is astounding, and it's just such a pressure cooker for women, because it's like, even saying that I want to have a child and solely be a mother is something that people go, oh, but like, what about your career, and what about this, and what about all your money and everything that you need? And it's like, well, I think that's probably one of the most important things I could do. I don't know if it will happen for me, but it's probably one of the most important things I'll ever do. So why couldn't I give that my all? And why is that looked down upon like it's something minor? I don't understand that. It's so important.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I feel like
everyone's free to choose, but I think a lot of the messaging is putting like copious amounts of pressure to like dull that down, and they just dull it out as like this, oh, it's just a biological urge, it'll pass, it's not important.
Yeah that's so offensive in so many ways. Whether you're doing that or whether you're choosing not to have children, like, people are going to have an opinion about it. And
why do you think people always have an opinion on mothers, Amy? Like, why do people always feel like they have the right to chime in?
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, I can even think back to, I laugh about this a lot with I find it something quite common that parents will say, new parents will say, well, like, I can't believe how I used to get like annoyed with kids in cafes, you know, and now when you're a parent and you go to a cafe and your kids are screaming, and you like, I'm not one. Some parents find that extremely triggering and challenging, but that's one of the things I don't find triggering. I find a lot of other things triggering, but I go to a cafe and my kid's screaming, I don't give a fuck. You got a problem with it? Go away. You know, like, to me, like families, mothers and their small children are a priority, and so are the elderly.
Yeah.
Feels like such a no shit Sherlock thing to say. Like, of course, like they're the first ones to get on planes, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And yeah, in some ways I think we've come far in our culture in terms of like, maybe not far, but we've come some way in terms of accommodating spaces for mothers and children, but we've got a really, really long way to go. And I think it's a maturity thing, really do. I think it's if I think about it, if I track it, it feels like a lack of respect. And I think if that's not been cultivated in your home, if you've not been, depending on the values that you've been grown up with in your family, like what was important, like what was modeled to you.
Yeah.
I don't think your parents need to model that. Or perhaps this is an interesting thread. It's like, if you were treated like you were inconvenient, you were loud, and you were X, Y, and Z, and you go into spaces and experience other children like that, then yes, you're going to see them as that too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then maybe becoming a parent is it's a like tension point for people. So in terms of the opinions, we will defend something to the death if we're not feeling entirely confident with where we're at with it, right? So if I'm feeling like insecure about choosing not to become a mother, like I'll defend it hard, because I need to, in order to hold up that identity, right? So not black and white, but I'm sure there's some nuance there, but that's pretty much how I would read it. What about you?
I definitely know if you have to defend something, it's not true.
Yeah. I like how you say it, artist.
Yeah, if you have to really argue your point to make people see things a certain way, it's probably not true.
I needed that reminder.
Yeah, I mean, I love to argue my point a lot, so I've definitely been through that. Like, I'm an opinionated person, and in a way it's kind of been good, because it allows me to then go to the other side and to the other side and like see things. But my earlier years, I used to fight to the bone to hold things up that weren't true, because I thought they had to be, so I would fit in, or whatever, so I belong. But in terms of like why people feel like they have an opinion on motherhood in general, like fucking random people going up to someone and giving a comment on their child or how they're doing things, like that just perplexes me, but also emphasizes just how deep everything connects back to the mother. Because if everyone feels like they have an opinion on it, that we're all connected to it. But it's very strange how, I don't know whether it's a lack of processing or not being fully aware and it becomes a projection. Like, I don't really understand what it is, but it just proves to me how important mothering is if everyone has an opinion on it. Like, because everyone's impacted by it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. In its simplest form, I guess that answers it. And then there's also the whole, I think sometimes I've protected myself consciously from, like, there's the underworld, and then there's like the really like dark corners of the world that it's, how would you phrase it? I guess it would be like, the unconscious underworld, or the non-integrated underworld, where like really messed up people operate in that energy field, right? I think that comes down to a lot of things. I think like so many people in the world are like over medicated and not fully present in their bodies. Like, if you think about the potential that also social media and the internet has to actually like drive people crazy. If you think someone's got like, a mental illness, and they can really go deep right in the internet to find places that like validate or feed that part of
Yes.
themselves that's really sick. And that can just get darker and darker and darker. And I have protected myself from like that for most of my life. Like I just choose to, some might call it ignorance. I think most of the time it's just me choosing to place my attention in places that are going to support me to like be the best person I can be in my life, in my family. But it is slowly, I think it's probably a capacity thing. I think my capacity is expanding to be able to start to see a little bit what's going on there. And I don't know why. Yeah. It might just be, yeah, it's a maturity thing. It's okay, I'm ready to actually, I have the capacity. It's actually down to capacity, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't need to know why yet, I guess, but I'm starting to see that. So when you speak about like crazy people doing like crazy shit, like it makes me think of that corner of the world, that corner of the psyche, right?
Yeah. I mean, because it's that
Is
thing
there
that,
like,
yes, eh?
is there like, because I don't know, other than intuitively picking up on things, I haven't done like deep work around understanding the archetypes, but is there one that describes that particular aspect? Ooh,
One that comes to mind within the construct of the maiden mother matrix within the archetypes is the voice of like the death mother.
Okay.
And it's kind of like I guess the term is like the not good enough mother, and like the one that's like, in nature where like the mother like just deserts her young or like kills her young, and it's really like this distorted and almost like feeding off of the maiden energy. And just shutting it down and sucking out her confidence, sucking out her life force, and it's just really ugly. And also you could call it like the patriarchalized feminine, where it's just like sucks everything out. And in a way it sounds like a parasite. But also when I looked into that archetype a little more, it's got this like false sense of protection, whereas the great mother holds space for everything, has approval for everything, light and dark, knows it's a cycle, whereas the death mother is like got this fear and like tries to control and cling and protect as much as it extracts. So I think our culture, it's like the wicked stepmother, or like the evil twin sister. Like it's just got this like really dark, unintegrated aspect to it. And I've seen that in my family tree. Like I've witnessed that, and what it does to people. It's just crushing. And like coming back from something like that it's hard. It's hard to do. Needs a lot of love. But what happens if you're on the receiving end of it is that you really don't think you're worthy of it. It takes a lot of work to get out of that corner.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that you've been put in. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's okay.
That's like really great perspective for me. So I haven't been able to like place it lately. It's just been like coming up. Yeah.
Like I think it's sometimes like for me, when I encounter that energy, it's like it's the voice. It's like, oh, you're not worth anything, you're not good enough, and like really has that shame, controlling, like just make you, pin you down, make you small, like that's sort of the energy that I would describe it as, is through that, like the death mother archetype.
I know that place. It's not a nice place to be. Really isn't.
But I think the thing that I would see is if you didn't have a caregiver that embodied like the cherishing mother in some way, that's what you got instead. Like that's the thing that runs in the program. And it's not even just in mothers. It's like really like fear-mongering, power-hungry women in the industry. Like it's got this veneer, like Hansel and Gretel, like this big beautiful house. It looks, oh, yummy, this looks great. And on the inside it's like, get in the oven, kid, I'm gonna eat you.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it goes beyond just the relationship or the dynamic within motherhood and children, and so it goes like into other areas too.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that.
Ugh.
I also see the like, yeah, I see the veneers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Ugh. It's uncomfortable, but I mean, mother is everything, so it does hold all the light, all the shadow as well. And I think I was having that conversation with my friend Ashley on the show recently about the Matrix and what it really is. And it's like, for me, it is the mother. And it holds absolutely everything, and some of it's really dark and disgusting, but it's also part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you really have been through that in yourself, but you like really hold the space for that too. Because I remember there was a point where you were like allowing mothers to voice the part that like they really weren't happy with in themselves, or like the thing that they would never be open or willing to admit that they do. And
Yeah.
like that was so powerful, because when you can see the death mother, when you can see these patterns and things, it just like gives you that sense of spaciousness and approval that you can move from that place,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
even just hold that place as well.
It was the bad mother. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really cathartic. Yeah. It makes me think about nature and like how I've been experiencing my environment lately, because
Yeah.
um I'm living by the sea, and we moved here like in November last year, and it's amazing and I love it, and I've always wanted to be close to the sea, but I grew up in the mountains, like by the forest. And when I moved to London and then came home, we stayed, in the familiar area, right in the bosom of Table Mountain and in the forest. So it's like very green, and
Beautiful.
spend a lot of time in the mountain. So it's very familiar. And even though when you go into the mountain, you can see like evidence of trees shedding leaves, and like, there's like moss and just so many different textures, and it's so multidimensional depending on what season it is. The ocean so far, the landscape, it's very different. Like it's expansive, and there's not a lot of trees, and the trees that are here, I think they're evergreen, so they don't really shed. So you kind of like feel kind of a bit in this like abyss, like it's a bit disorientating. But the other piece is the ocean is not as clean, I think, as we think it is. And where we are, there's like an enormous amount of seaweed and kelp that gets washed up onto the beach. And the kelp starts like rotting, and there's flies, and there's like cockroaches, and the smells. And it's like, so, there's this evidence of like this very kind of beautiful life death cycle that I see like in the mountains and the forest. But then on the beach, I'm like, this level of like decay and rotting, I haven't really been like, up close and personal with until now. So yeah, I love to just extract the gold from that. I don't know what it is yet. And I think there is a piece around like, I'm sure some of it's probably a consequence of like man-made impact on the ecosystem and on the earth in general. But there's probably other pieces that are just like, this is a natural evolution of how things, I don't know, evolve like in this kind of environment, right? By the sea. This could go into a geography lesson, and I have absolutely no but I should actually look at it from that perspective. I should like do some research around the kelp thing and actually find out what's really happening, and perhaps it'll bring me a level of understanding. And this is making me laugh because you and I, before we pressed record, were talking about how like we look into everything. It's like, I can't actually just experience the kelp with the flies, just being kelp and flies. No, no, the kelp and flies and the deeper
I don't know. When you work with the feminine, it's just like, and you understand that she's always communicating to you, always. Like the smallest thing can be that, but unless you want to look, that is like it can be like, oh, why do I always have to research and look and investigate? But I feel like if you're drawn to it, there's something in it for you. And like, I know you were drawn to that place, that like geographical place for a reason. And you'll find, and you know what that is already, I'm sure, but it's going to be revealed to you as the seasons continue to change.
Yeah. And I do, like, it's comforting for me to, like you're saying, that she's always there and drawing me in, and I can feel that.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's like to follow that which is like touching at my like desire, my urge, my strings. It's like I want to follow that. That's kind of what I've always done. So and it's also funny. I like laughing.
I mean, you got to have your humor in this work. It makes me wonder though, like what your constitution is, if you really just are so comfortable in the mountains and like, you know, in terms of like the elements balance in your chart and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting. It's going to reveal. I'm here for the ride, so I'm looking forward to hearing.
I'll keep you posted for sure
about this. So
I know a little bit about my chart, but not a lot, and I haven't done any human design stuff, but I do want to. Yeah, would you say that something I wanted to ask you about the archetypes is, would you say it's a similar lens to astrology and human design?
I mean, everything is either like, I love seeing where things intersect, and right now, like all of those systems are about bringing you into your body in relationship to truth.
Yeah. So there we go. Yeah.
So that's my Cliff Notes version. But yeah, it's powerful to use these systems if they call to you. But the people I look to, you know, whether it's archetypes or embodiment work or the feminine can be loads of different things, but feminine embodiment or human design, astrology, whatever, like the people who really use it well, it's about embodiment. Yeah. It's about being the truth with the truth of who you are and that constant evolution of what that is. So, you know, those, you know, human designs helped me a lot it's like saying it in a different language. Yeah. Helping me see different parts of me. And I'm at this point where it just feels like, oh, this is coming together. It's like cooking in the system. But it's helpful to know that if you're interested in going down the rabbit hole, because it's a rabbit hole. It's a big rabbit hole.
And I guess if you hear the call, then
exactly.
But
you're really good at hearing that and following that. That's one of the things I love most about you, and I just feel so grateful that you've made the time to speak with me today. First podcast, hopefully it won't be the last. Hopefully you'll come back on the show, because I just feel that people are going to get an immense value just from witnessing this conversation. And I don't know, I feel like the other thing that you do really well is just you have such approval for life and death and all the suffering and all the joy and everything in between. And I am really grateful to know you and just witness you being you in the world and sharing that with other people, you know, like it's really cool to know you. And I'm just really grateful that you made the time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Really special to be here. I really believe in just doing things with intention, and it's been like a journey to get here, right? Like just supporting each other as we arrived at this moment in time today, and what is being kind of conjured up in this meeting is it's like quite sacred. Like it's like every time I come onto Mother Nurture, or every time I have a client call, it feels like something is brewing, and I'm like feeding something really feeding life. I'm feeding her. And it's an honor to do that with people. Like, this is what brings me absolute joy in my life. It really does. It feeds me in ways that it's just so fulfilling. So thank you. And yeah, I'm inspired. I'm inspired by you and inspired to be here. I actually pulled a card before the call. I want to show you what it is.
I was doing this. I was going to do the same. I'm like, I bet you Amy's done it. Yeah, what is it? What is it? Scorpion. Oh my gosh. Did we just have, wasn't the moon in Scorpio eclipse? Yeah, of course it was.
That's why I was like, I don't know what it's going to say, but let's see. Ooh, interesting. The scorpion is a passionate and determined creature. Their career is very important to them, as are a few select friends. Sometimes the scorpion's heat festers and they focus on an unresolved event from the past, usually a situation where they were left feeling burned. The scorpion card says it's time to come clean about your feelings so everyone can heal and you can get back to your usual fiery but fun self. When in balance, wild and free, fierce. When out of balance, jealous, resentful, unresolved. To bring into balance, honesty and forgiveness. Beautiful. Yeah.
Dude. Really felt the passion, really felt the fierceness. It's just, yeah, that card's really awesome. How's it land for you after the conversation?
Yeah, amazing. I also feel that. I feel that like that's like my true nature, really.
Surprise.
Yeah, that's like my true nature. I can track it back to when I was little and I can feel her alive in me now. And yeah, the shadow aspects too, very resonant for me. Yeah.
When your website's ready, I'll add it to the show notes along with your Instagram. So people are like wondering how to find you. It's Somatic of Spirit. Yeah, on Instagram. It'll be in the show notes. And I look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you so much.